everybody, Hikaru Cosplay here. Today I wanted to do a makeup slash kind of sort of wig test with my Stormy Weather from Miraculous Ladybug. I will be doing this for Comic-Con this year on Sunday, as well as hosting the Miraculous Ladybug cosplay meetup slash photo shoot on Sunday. Make sure you check out our page, Cosplay Crew, link below for the Facebook in the description for any sort of information about that meetup. So today I kind of wanted to talk about something that I am incredibly guilty of, and that is wearing big costumes at big conventions. I'm talking the huge space takers, the I can barely walk and move in a crowd, the I need a lot of help because I can't handle anything myself kind of costumes. Now, I'm not like to the level of those amazing Reinhardt cosplayers that you've seen from Overwatch, or like the big Hulkbuster suit that was at NYCC last year, but I still take up a lot of space, and it'll usually be to the point where I'm like, I can't go out to the dealer's room in the artist alley because there's too many people. And unfortunately, you would think that if you had a big costume, you would be given a lot of space and that people would be kind of gracious and be like, oh, I'm not gonna get in the way of that. But no, people still crowd into you and possibly mess up your stuff when you're in big costumes at things like Comic-Con and whatever big conventions. It's still a problem. Like, you would think giant ball gown means space. Apparently, it doesn't mean space. Today I wanted to go over some advice for people who are considering or are going to be doing a big costume at a big event for the first time. Now, for me, these big costumes mean like tails for Ari cosplays from League of Legends, big ball gowns, big feather pieces, big wigs, big wings, and and when it comes to these kinds of costumes, it's a case-by-case basis. How fragile is the costume? Is it made of armor? Is it pointy? Is it feathery? Do you have peripheral vision? Can you move your neck, or do you have to move it by shoulders? Like, I can't move my neck very much because of this wig, so I have to move like this. Kind of like the Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale Batman with that big cowl that just, you can't move. How mobile are you? Do you need help walking? Do you need help carrying your bags? Of course, it's always good, no matter what big costume you're doing, to have a handler. To have somebody who is either in a more comfortable costume or somebody who's not in cosplay to help you carry your bags, maybe hand you your cell phone, keep an eye on some parts that may malfunction during the day, help you with water. Sometimes with costumes that restrict your hand movements, you're gonna need somebody to help you with a straw and some Gatorade and a water bottle or whatever. So it's good to have a really good friend to help you out. If you don't, you're in a lot of trouble, needless to say. If you don't have a handler, you're just gonna have to be really patient with yourself and pray for the best, and honestly, you're gonna have to do a lot of practice no matter what. Make sure you try on the costume before you go to the con and make sure, okay, this makes me walk funny, oh, this is how this is gonna go, oh, I can't go up and down stairs, that kind of a thing. It also depends upon the con center. Some con centers have elevators or escalators or just stairs, so make sure you take a look at the map beforehand if you have issues walking up and down stairs. And make sure you're also giving yourself a lot of time to get from point A to point B, because no matter what, if you're in a big costume, even if it doesn't restrict your mobility, you're gonna get a lot of people asking for photos, and we all know once one person asks for a photo, 50 people come up, and next thing you know, you're there for half an hour. So you're gonna need to make sure that you have a lot of time for if you need to get from point A to point B. Don't leave things till last second if you've got to make that panel or that photo shoot. And also be able to say no. I will admit, I feel really guilty and really bad when I have to say no for a photo, and I really only do it if like I absolutely have to go to the bathroom, or somebody I'm with or myself is having health issues, or we really need food, or we're running late for a shoot or whatever have you. And I try to keep that to a minimum. But yeah, you gotta learn how to say no, and I have another video talking about people who don't know how to take no for an answer, and talking about like saying no for photos. It's like, you know, feel bad. I always apologize, like I'm sorry, I'm running around, I got, you know, this to do or whatever, and just, most people, 90% of people are totally cool with it. So they understand, even if they're not a cosplayer themselves. Yeah, they'll be a little disappointed, but most of the time people are like, oh, okay, that's fine, yeah. So it's the 10% that you gotta look out for. I've got another video titled My Recent Rude Con Experience or something along those lines if you wanna see more about refusing and people who don't take no for an answer when it comes to photos. But back to the topic on hand with big costumes. Again, make sure you're taking the time for yourself, whether it's people asking for photos or just you don't have a lot of mobility. And you're gonna have to deal with crowds a lot, I'm sure, especially at Comic-Con. If you've got those wings that can't be bumped into, kind of go into the crowd sideways, you know, like have somebody around you kind of like keeping an eye on things, you know. If you got a big gown, you know, carrying it and stuff, maybe have somebody else carry the gown, help carry the gown with you or whatever. It just, again, it depends upon what about the costume restricts your movement or is big or whatever have you. You have that big prop. With big props, 90% of the time you can kind of use that to like part the seas in the crowd. If it's a really delicate prop, I wouldn't recommend using it as much to keep everybody away. But you're gonna, at this point, I have no patience for people who are blocking space or whatever have you, or just don't know how to move for a big costume. So I'm just like, excuse me, pardon me, out of the way. I don't, you know, try to be polite, but like, you need to move. So you're gonna have to get that down pat if you're gonna do a big costume at something like Comic-Con. And you're also gonna have to learn where you can and can't go. There's only so much that costume can take. You're gonna have to maybe pass up on an aisle in dealer's room or pass up in dealer's room altogether that day because it's just like there's too much at risk. Like there are so many moments I have looked down a hallway or a row or just a portion of the con center and just been like, that's not happening. And that's kind of a sense that you acquire over time, either throughout the day or just from cosplaying. Mostly throughout the day, the more you wear the costume, the more spatially aware you kind of become, and you're like, okay, so this is something I can't do. I can't bend that way. I can't go in a crowd that compact or whatever have you. You're gonna have to learn to say, I can't go that way. And if you absolutely have to, it's gonna take time and you're gonna have to say excuse me about 1,000,000 times. It's unfortunate. I will say for people who are doing big costumes, if you really, really want to go into the dealer's room or Artist Alley that day and like that's your only day, go in the morning. Especially with Artist Alley and New York Comic Con. At New York Comic Con, you really need to hit up the Artist Alley early in the morning if you've got a bulkier costume. Dealer's room, you can kind of sort of get through most of the day in a bigger costume. But like only on really the outer rims. There are just some of the alleyways that are towards the back that are just too compact that I just would not recommend. I doubt they're going to be changing it again this year. It'll probably be roughly the same layout. And also it depends upon the day. Like Thursdays and Sundays and Fridays are usually the better days to get into a dealer's room with a big costume because Saturday is the busiest day actually. So last year's New York Comic Con, I went 4 days. Thursday, I was Academy Ari from League of Legends. Friday, I was Nocturnal from Skyrim. Saturday was Officer Vi with my big movable hands from League of Legends. And Sunday was the evil version of Raven Queen from Ever After High. Thursday was technically preview day, and Thursday usually has the lowest amount of attendance, of course. So we had no problems going into the dealer's room and Artist Alley and all that. And the person I had with me, who's my go-to handler, Kinetic Cosplay. He's my go-to handler, A+, best person ever. He would keep an eye on my tails and how they moved and hit people, but luckily they were really plush tails, so it's not like it was that big of a problem and they didn't have to be treated delicately. And the rest of the costume was super mobile too. Friday, no issues. Saturday, I had the big gauntlets. They were delicate, but I was able to use them to kind of part the seas with people, just kind of like put them a little in front and behind me, just make some space. But I had to be delicate with them, so I didn't go too deep into things like dealer's room, and I didn't go into Artist Alley, and I tried to be careful with the crowds. And Sunday with Evil Raven, there wasn't a lot of mobility, and the feathers blocked out my peripheral vision, and I kept hitting my friends with them. Somehow I was able to make it in dealer's room. I was genuinely surprised I was able to make it in dealer's room with that costume. I didn't think I was. But then again, that was Sunday and not Saturday. So just when it comes to doing big costumes, you're gonna have to make sacrifices. You're making sacrifices in terms of your mobility, in terms of where you can go, what you're doing that day. Sometimes I really can recommend that if you're doing something really, really big, especially something that you know you can't be in for a long period of time, consider changing, you know? Like changing halfway through the day, or like be only in it for like an hour or at night. New York Comic Con, it's kind of harder to do that just because there's no hotel connected to the convention center. But things like Dragon Con or whatever have you, you do have that ability to change partway through the day and all that. So, or take breaks, at least take breaks. Take moments where you sit down and you take off that big armor piece or that piece that kind of hurts you or whatever, you know, that makes your mobile awkward, or those awkward shoes, and take a moment, say no for any photos, sit down, have a snack and drink some water. Make sure you're having a snack and drinking some water. Have a good meal, like a good breakfast with protein during the day. Be careful. That's all I can say, is be careful, and just learn. A little bit of it is also learning to live with it. You're gonna have to learn to live with the awkward mobility and relying on people, and I really cannot express the piece of advice of having people to help you. If you're doing a big costume, you really need to have someone to help you. And I always feel embarrassed because it's like, oh man, I'm the really needy person who always does this big costume that inconveniences everybody, and I feel bad about that. But sometimes it's just, I can't help it, who I want to cosplay, what I want to do, how far I want to push my skills. So there's some trade-offs, but honestly, it's worth it to see that amazing piece of work, like all that time that you spend and how amazing it looks and how good you feel, like looking at yourself and like photos and all of that. I was about to say how good you feel in it. Not physically, I'm talking about how good you feel emotionally in it. Like, do you feel like the character? Do you feel like you're proud of what you've done? That is the point. Forget about the pain. The pain only lasts for a day or so. It only lasts for the time you're in the costume. The memories last forever. So don't let a big, like, things like this, like, oh, I want to be like mobility or whatever have you, hold you back from doing a big costume that you really, really want to do. Just be aware of what you're getting yourself into. It's not all peaches and cream. It's not super easy. But hopefully this was helpful for some people who are doing this for the first time or considering doing a big costume. Big costumes are a lot easier to handle at medium-sized to small-sized conventions, but they're always spectacular at big conventions. Oh darn. Well, I hope to see you guys next week, and I hope to see some of you guys at New York Comic Con. So, bye!